There are moments in life that mark us forever, whispers of destiny that change our path when we least expect it. The story I'm going to tell you today could be that of your neighbor, your grandmother, or even your own. Are you ready to hear this story? I'll never forget the look on my granddaughter's face when I handed her the birthday present. The coldness in her eyes, the sneer of contempt on her lips. It was like being stabbed in the chest with an icicle. "Grandma, another cheap gift? The best present you could give me would be to just die already. At least then I'd inherit something worth having. 76 years of life, and I never imagined I'd hear such cruel words from my own granddaughter's mouth. But that phrase, those poisonous words, were the spark that ignited my liberation. This is my story. My name is Margaret Wilson. I'm 76 years old, and until recently, I was the typical self-sacrificing American grandmother. My entire life had revolved around my only daughter Susan and my granddaughter Emily. I was a high school mathematics teacher in Boston for over 35 years before retiring a decade ago. My husband Richard passed away 15 years ago, leaving me alone, but with a modest pension and some savings we had accumulated during our life together. Since Richard's death, I had become the financial and emotional backbone of my family. Susan, my 45-year-old daughter, had married Robert, a man who always had grandiose business schemes but few actual results. They had a daughter, Emily, who at 18 was about to start college. The story that changed my life began on a warm June day in Massachusetts. It was Emily's 18th birthday, and as always, I had saved for months to buy her something special. This time it was a delicate pearl necklace that had belonged to my mother, a family heirloom I had kept for decades for this special occasion. I also brought a chocolate raspberry cake from the most prestigious bakery in Boston. The Uber dropped me off in front of the large colonial house my daughter and her husband owned in Lexington, one of the most exclusive suburbs of Boston. A house whose $250,000 down payment I had financed, using almost all the savings Richard and I had accumulated during our working lives. "It's an investment in Emily's future," Susan had told me when she asked for the money. "Besides, you'll have a room here whenever you want to visit us." That room, ironically, was a converted storage closet, with no windows and barely enough space for a twin bed. I had never stayed there. I rang the doorbell, holding the elegant cake box in one hand, and the small package with the necklace in the other. I waited several minutes before Susan opened the door. "Oh, Mom, it's you," she said, not hiding a certain disappointment in her voice. "You're early. The guests won't arrive for another 2 hours." "I thought I could help you with the preparations," I replied with a smile, trying to hide the pain her reception caused me. And I wanted to give Emily my gift before her friends arrived. Susan rolled her eyes. "She's in her room, probably getting ready. Leave the cake in the kitchen and go see her if you want." I entered the house. I had helped purchase, but where I always felt like an intruder. The decor was ostentatious, with designer furniture and contemporary artwork that Robert bought on his business trips. All financed largely by my constant loans that were never repaid. I left the cake in the immense marble kitchen and climbed the stairs to Emily's room. Before I reached it, I heard music and laughter. Her door was ajar, and I could see she wasn't alone. 3 of her friends were there, all dressed in expensive clothes, laughing as they looked at themselves in the mirror. I gently knocked on the door. "Emily, it's Grandma." The laughter abruptly ceased. Emily turned toward the door with an expression that mixed surprise and annoyance. "Grandma, why are you here so early?" she asked, without getting up to greet me. "I wanted to give you my gift before the party started," I replied, timidly entering the room. Emily's friends looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and disdain, as if I were a relic from another time. I immediately felt out of place in my simple floral dress and gray hair pulled back in a bun. "You could have given it to me later," Emily muttered, clearly uncomfortable with my presence in front of her friends. "It's something special. I thought you'd like to open it in private," I insisted, extending the small package wrapped in silver paper. Emily took it reluctantly and opened it carelessly, tearing the paper I had folded so carefully. When she saw the jewelry box, A spark of interest appeared in her eyes, but it quickly vanished when she opened it and saw the necklace. "Is this it?" she asked, lifting the delicate necklace as if it were a trinket. "An old necklace? I thought you were going to give me something real, like that new iPhone I mentioned." I felt as if I'd been slapped. "That necklace belonged to your great-grandmother. It's been in our family for 3 generations. It's genuine pearl." One of her friends giggled. "It looks like something from TJ Maxx from last season." "Grandma," Emily said with a tired voice, as if explaining something to a small child. "You know that Megan's grandparents gave her a car for her birthday, right? And Zoe's grandparents are paying for an apartment downtown when she starts at BU. I didn't know," I stammered, feeling increasingly smaller. "Of course you didn't. You live in your retired world, with your pathetic pension, and your outdated ideas about sentimental value." Her words hit me with a cruelty I had never experienced. But the worst was yet to come. "Grandma, let's be honest," Emily continued, encouraged by the approving looks from her friends. "The best gift you could give me would be to just die already. At least then I'd inherit something worth having and wouldn't have to keep pretending I care about your visits and your pathetic gifts." Time stopped. The air left my lungs. I felt as if the floor beneath my feet had opened up, letting me fall into an abyss of pain. The giggles of Emily's friends reached my ears as if from far away, muffled by the sound of my heart breaking. "Hi. I'm sorry," was all I could say before turning around and quickly leaving the room. I descended the stairs with trembling legs, holding onto the railing to keep from falling. On the ground floor, I ran into Robert, my son-in-law, who had just arrived. "Margaret, I didn't know you'd be here so early," he said with his usual fake cordiality. "I was just about to call you. I have a new investment opportunity you'd love to hear about. I only need about $60,000 to get started." I didn't hear the rest. Without saying a word, I walked past him and left the house. Tears blurred my vision as I walked through the elegant neighborhood, desperately searching for a rideshare on my phone. What my granddaughter didn't know, what none of them imagined, was that her cruel words had planted a seed of revolution within me. A seed that, watered by the tears of that afternoon, would grow into an unstoppable force that would change our lives forever. The Uber dropped me off in front of my small condo in Cambridge, a modest apartment I had bought with Richard many years ago when we were both young teachers full of dreams. I stumbled in, dropped my purse on the floor, and collapsed on the couch, the same couch where I had cradled Susan as a baby, where I had dried her tears when she fell, where I had read her stories every night. Emily's words echoed in my mind like a cruel refrain. "The best gift would be for you to die." My own granddaughter, the girl I had babysit when Susan and Robert were too busy, whom I had picked up from school for years, for whom I had paid for tutoring and summer camps, wished me dead as a birthday gift. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the darkness, reliving not just Emily's cruel words, but my entire life, since Richard's death. I remembered every time I had emptied my savings to help Susan and Robert, the down payment on the house, $250,000, Robert's failed import business, the luxury car that Susan needed to maintain her image, $65,000, the annual vacations to exclusive destinations, Emily's private schools, the endless emergencies that always required my financial assistance. At dawn, I did something I had never done before. I pulled out all the folders where I kept receipts, transfers, contracts I had signed to help my family. An old math teacher never loses her organizational habits. Sitting at the kitchen table, I began to add up each amount, each date, each reason. The total stunned me. More than $600,000 in 15 years. $600,000 that I had sacrificed from my retirement, from my dreams of traveling, from my ability to live comfortably in my final years. All for a daughter and granddaughter who considered my death as the only valuable gift I could offer them. Something strange happened as I looked at those numbers. The pain I had felt all night began to transform into something else. Not anger, although there was anger too. but a crystal clear clarity that I had never experienced before. A deep understanding that I had been manipulated and used by the people I loved most in the world. If I had invested that $600,000 in myself, I thought, where would I be now? Traveling the world as I had always dreamed, living in a more comfortable home, enjoying a peaceful retirement without financial worries. Instead, I was in a small condo, counting the pennies of my pension, postponing medical treatments I needed so I could continue helping a family that wished me dead so they could inherit what little I had left. At 8 a.m., I made a decision that would change my life. I called my bank and blocked my credit card, the same one I had lent to Susan just for emergencies, but that she regularly used for her shopping. Then I blocked access to my savings account, where Susan had authorization to make withdrawals in case of need. It was a small act of rebellion, but I felt a strange sense of power, a power I hadn't experienced in years. It was just the beginning. My next call was to my neighbor and best friend, Eleanor. Unlike Susan, who visited me primarily when she needed money, Eleanor stopped by my place almost every day for coffee and conversation. She had been a silent witness to all my sacrifices for my family over the years. "Margaret? Are you okay? Your voice sounds strange," Eleanor said when she answered the phone. "Can you come over to my place? I need to talk to you. It's important." Half an hour later, Eleanor was sitting across from me at my small kitchen table, listening silently as I told her everything. Emily's cruel words, my sleepless night, the tally of all the money I had given to my family, my small act of financial rebellion that morning. "My God, Margaret," Eleanor murmured when I finished, her eyes full of tears. "I can't believe Emily would say something so horrible to you. What are you going to do now?" "I'm going to disappear," I replied with a calmness that surprised even myself. "What do you mean?" "I want them to think I've died, at least for a while. Emily wants me to die as a birthday gift, and I'm going to grant her wish, in my own way." I explained my plan to Eleanor. I was going to sell my condo, cancel all financial support to Susan and Robert, withdraw my savings, and start a new life in Florida, a state I had always loved, but had never been able to fully enjoy. "Will you help me?" I asked Eleanor. My friend looked at me with a mixture of amazement and admiration. "Of course I'll help you. It's about time you thought about yourself, Margaret. That family of yours has abused your generosity for far too long." That same afternoon, as I developed my escape plan, I received the first call from Susan. I didn't answer. She called 5 more times, leaving increasingly irritated messages. "Mom, where are you? You left without saying goodbye." "Mom, Robert needs to talk to you about that project he mentioned." "Mom, the credit card isn't working. Have you called the bank?" "Mom, I'm starting to worry. Why aren't you answering?" The irony wasn't lost on me. The same daughter who had gone weeks without calling me when she didn't need anything was now desperate to contact me because her source of funding seemed to have dried up. On Monday morning, 3 days after Emily's fateful birthday, I set my plan in motion. My first stop was the bank. The manager, Mr. Thompson, greeted me with the familiarity of someone who had known me for decades. "Mrs. Wilson, how can I help you today?" "I want to close the joint account I have with my daughter Susan, and transfer all the money to a new account in my name only." Mr. Thompson looked at me in surprise. "Are you sure? That account has a substantial balance." "Absolutely sure," I confirmed, signing the forms with a steady hand. "I also want to withdraw all my savings and close my retirement plan. I'm making a significant investment." Seeing those $180,000, all I had left after years of generosity toward my family, returned to my exclusive control, gave me a strange feeling of power and freedom. My next stop was a real estate agency. I put my condo up for sale with precise instructions. I wanted a quick sale even if it meant accepting a slightly lower price than the market value. "Are you moving to another area of Boston, Mrs. Wilson?" asked the young real estate agent. "I'm moving to another life," I replied with an enigmatic smile. Next, I visited a notary to modify my will. Until that moment, Susan was my sole heir. Now I divided my assets. Half would go to a foundation that helped older women in vulnerable situations, and the other half to a trust for Emily that she would only receive when she turned 30, on the condition that she complete her college education and work for at least 5 years on her own. My last stop, that day, was the New Horizons travel agency, specializing in relocations for older adults. I had kept one of their brochures for years, secretly dreaming of possibilities that always seemed out of my reach. "Good morning. I'd like information on how to relocate to live in Florida," I told the advisor, a young woman named Jennifer. "Are you looking for something temporary or permanent?" "Permanent. I want to start a new life," Jennifer smiled without surprise. "It's not as unusual as you might think, Mrs. Wilson. We have many clients who decide to make significant changes at this stage of life. Florida is an excellent choice, especially for someone like you who's looking for independence and new experiences." As Jennifer showed me housing options and explained the necessary procedures for the move, I felt an emotion I hadn't experienced in decades. Hope. Hope for a life lived on my own terms, without being the ATM for an ungrateful family. That night, in my apartment, I worked on the most important letter of my life, the one I would leave for Susan before disappearing. I wrote and rewrote it several times, making sure that every word conveyed exactly what I wanted to say. "Dear Susan," I began. "Emily asked me as a birthday gift to disappear from her life, preferably by dying, and I have decided to grant her that wish. By the time you read this letter, I will be far away from here, starting the life I should have lived decades ago, instead of sacrificing everything for a family that only sees me as a bank to turn to when they need money." I continued writing for hours, documenting every dollar I had spent on them, every sacrifice I had made, every opportunity I had lost by always being available for their needs. It wasn't a bitter letter but an educational one. I wanted them to understand exactly what they had lost. Along with this letter you will find legal documents I have signed this week. My new will, the cancellation of your access to my bank accounts, the suspension of all payments I made to help you and Robert, and my resignation as guarantor of your mortgage. Your life will be much easier without me, but also much more expensive. I hope the inheritance that Emily so eagerly awaits is worth the wait." Upon finishing the letter, I felt as if an enormous weight had been lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in years, I was breathing freely without the constant pressure of my family's expectations and demands. The following days were a roller coaster of emotions and secret preparations. Each morning I woke up with a mixture of fear, determination, and surprisingly, excitement. It was as if I had awakened from a long trance where I lived only to satisfy the whims of my daughter and granddaughter. And now, finally, I was living for myself. On Thursday, a week after Emily's birthday, Susan appeared at my door unannounced. Through the peephole, I saw her tense expression and decided not to open. She knocked insistently for 10 minutes, then left a message on the answering machine. "Mom, I know you're in there. The bank says you've closed our joint accounts and withdrawn all your money. What's going on? Robert is desperate about the mortgage payment this month. Call me immediately." There wasn't a single word of concern for me, only for the money they could no longer get from me. This confirmed I was making the right decision. On Friday, I received a call that changed everything. My condo had sold in record time. The buyer, a foreign investor, had offered the full price in cash with the condition of a quick sale. I could move out in 2 weeks. I immediately called Jennifer at the travel agency. "I need an apartment in Florida as soon as possible. I already have a buyer for my condo in Boston." "I have something perfect for you," Jennifer replied. "A small condo in St. Petersburg, close to everything but on a quiet street. You could move in next week if you're interested." "I'm interested," I confirmed without hesitation. On Sunday, Eleanor came to my house as we had agreed. She brought freshly brewed coffee and a conspiratorial smile that filled me with energy. "Ready for your great escape?" she asked, winking at me. "More than ready," I replied, pointing to the 2 suitcases I had prepared by the door. "Do you have the spare keys to my condo?" "Here they are," she said, showing me the set of keys I had given her the night before. And I also have the letter for Susan and all the documents you want me to give her. We had planned everything meticulously. Eleanor would wait 3 days after my departure to go to Susan's house and deliver the letter, pretending she had found my apartment empty and was concerned about me. Remember, I instructed her as we waited for the Uber. You have to appear genuinely concerned. Tell her that I didn't answer the phone for days, that you knocked on my door and I didn't respond, and that when you used the emergency keys, you found the apartment empty, and the letter. Don't worry, Margaret. I was an amateur actress in my youth. This will be the performance of my life, Eleanor assured me with a mischievous smile. The Uber arrived punctually at 6 a.m. As the driver loaded my suitcases, I took one last look at my condo. I had lived there for 40 years, first with Richard and then alone. But strangely I felt no nostalgia. It was as if I was finally freeing myself from a prison I had built myself with my poorly valued sacrifices. To Logan Airport? Asked the driver. To Logan Airport. I confirmed, and I felt as if those words marked the beginning of my new existence. The flight to Tampa was quiet and exciting. For the first time in decades, no one knew where I was. No one could call me to ask for money, favors, or time. It was an intoxicating feeling of freedom that I hadn't experienced since before I became a mother. During the 3-hour flight, I wrote in my journal everything that had happened in the last 2 weeks. Every detail, every emotion, every decision that had led me to this moment. This is the first time in 45 years, I wrote, that I'm doing something completely for myself, without calculating how it will benefit Susan or Emily. It's frightening and liberating at the same time. Upon arriving in Tampa, Jennifer had arranged for a representative of the agency to pick me up at the airport. He was a friendly young man named Michael who spoke with a slight southern drawl. Mrs. Wilson. He greeted me with a genuine smile. Welcome to Florida! I hope you're ready for your new life. More than ready, I replied. And for the first time in weeks, my smile was completely authentic. Michael took me to my new home, a small but charming furnished condo in St. Petersburg, a second-floor unit in a well-maintained complex, with a small balcony overlooking a garden with palm trees. The rent was paid for 6 months, enough time to decide if I wanted to stay permanently and buy something of my own. Here's all the information about the neighborhood, said Michael, handing me a folder. Recommended restaurants, cultural activities, social groups for expatriates and retirees, and medical contacts in case you need them. I've also scheduled an appointment with a financial advisor for Wednesday to help you with the paperwork if you decide to stay permanently. That same afternoon, after unpacking and resting a bit, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went for a walk without a defined destination, without schedules, without commitments, without anyone expecting me to solve their problems. I walked along the streets of St. Petersburg, amazed at the Art Deco architecture, the small cafes on the corners, the artisan shops. I sat in a plaza and ordered an iced tea and a slice of key lime pie. I ate slowly, savoring each bite, watching the pigeons, the tourists, the locals. A strange feeling began to form in my chest. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't guilt, it was peace. A deep peace I hadn't felt in decades. As I walked back to the condo at the end of the afternoon, I mentally calculated how much money I had spent on Susan and her family just in the last 5 years. Between the house down payment, Robert's failed businesses, the luxury car, Emily's private schools, vacations, constant emergencies, it had been at least $400,000. Money I could have used to travel the world, to live comfortably, to fulfill dreams I had postponed for decades. Instead, I had given it all to a family that considered my love a burden and my presence a nuisance. At 8 p.m., I calculated it would be 8 p.m. in Boston as well. Eleanor would be preparing to visit Susan the next day and deliver the letter that would change everything. I sat on the small balcony of my condo drinking a glass of Californian red wine and waited. I knew that in a few hours my phone would start ringing desperately. Susan would finally understand what it really meant to lose me. Exactly as I had predicted, at midnight, The following day, my phone began to vibrate, insistently. It was Susan. I let it ring until it stopped. Immediately, it rang again, and again, and again. On the fifth attempt, I answered. "Mom," she shouted, her voice choked with tears. "Where are you?" "Eleanor showed up at the house with a letter from you. She says you've disappeared. What's happening? What madness is this?" "Hello, Susan," I replied calmly, watching the lights of St. Petersburg as I spoke. "Did you read the letter?" "Yes, I read it." "Have you gone crazy? How could you do this to us? Where are you?" "I'm exactly where I need to be, away from you, as Emily wished." But she didn't mean that. She didn't really want you to go away. She was just angry, frustrated. She didn't mean it. There it was, my daughter's typical tactic, minimizing the damage they had caused, making me feel guilty for reacting to their cruelty. She didn't mean it when she told me her best birthday gift would be for me to die. Because she sounded pretty convincing. It was just, "We're going through a difficult time. Robert lost money on an investment. Emily is having problems at school. We shouldn't have taken it out on you." "You're right, you shouldn't have. But it's done now, and words can't be unsaid." "But Mom, please, come back. We need you. I need you." How interesting this was. Now she needed me. Now that she had read the letter detailing all the financial benefits she had lost. Now that she knew she could no longer access my money. Now that she understood she would have to pay her own bills without my help. "Do you need me or my money?" I asked directly. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "I need you," she finally murmured, but her voice didn't sound convincing. "Susan, for 45 years I lived for you. I sacrificed my dreams, my money, my time, my opportunities, and when I finally needed to feel that you loved and valued me, your daughter told me she would prefer me dead." Those words broke my heart in a way that I will never be able to repair. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." "Apologies aren't enough, Susan. The damage is done. And you know what? Maybe it was the best thing you could have done for me, because it finally opened my eyes and made me understand that I've been living my entire life wrong." "What do you mean?" "I mean that for the first time in decades, I'm living for myself, and it's wonderful." "Where are you, Mom?" "Please tell me," Susan implored, her voice choked with tears. "Emily is devastated. She doesn't understand why you've disappeared. It was fascinating how, now that I wasn't available, my granddaughter suddenly missed me. For all these years, when I canceled my plans to babysit her, when I bought her expensive gifts, when I took her to the park while Susan went shopping, it was just what was expected of me. But now that I was gone, my absence was felt." "Emily will be fine," I replied, looking at the stars over Florida. "She's resilient. What she'll learn is that actions have consequences and that painful words can destroy relationships forever." "But Mom, please, you can't just disappear like this. What if something happens to you? What if you get sick? How will we know?" Now she was concerned about my well-being. "How convenient. Susan, in the last 2 years I had 2 episodes of hypertension that took me to the hospital. Do you know how many times you visited me? None. You always had something more important to do." "That's not true," she protested weakly. "It is true. The first time I called you from the emergency room, you said you couldn't come because you had a dinner with Robert's friends. The second time it was Emily's school play, and you were celebrating." The silence on the other end of the line confirmed that she remembered each occasion perfectly. I thought it wasn't serious," she murmured. "Of course, because my health was never a priority for you, but my money was." "It's not about the money," shouted Susan. "It's about you. I miss you, Mom." "Do you miss me, or do you miss having someone available 24 hours a day to solve your financial problems?" I hung up without waiting for an answer. The phone rang again, but this time, I silenced it completely. I needed peace to enjoy my first night of freedom in my new city. The following days were a constant discovery, not only of Florida, but of myself. There were parts of my personality, interests, and desires that had been dormant for decades. While I lived in function of Susan, and Emily. Now they were awakening one by one, like flowers after a long drought. I discovered that I loved Art Deco architecture and could spend hours admiring the details of the historic buildings in the area. I realized I had a natural talent for painting, and that watercolors, something I had never tried before, came easily to me. I rediscovered my love for mathematics, something I had taught for years, but hadn't practiced for pleasure in a long time. On Wednesday, I had my meeting with the American financial advisor, Mr. Reynolds. He was an older gentleman who helped me understand all my options for permanent residence in Florida. With your current savings and pension, you can live comfortably here for many years, he explained. Florida has excellent health programs for retirees, and the quality of life in St. Petersburg is exceptional. For the first time in years, I spoke openly about my finances, without worrying about saving money for Susan's emergencies. It was liberating to calculate my expenses based solely on my own needs and desires. You can also invest part of your savings here in Florida, continued Mr. Reynolds. The returns are stable and secure. In 5 years, you could significantly increase your assets if you invest wisely. Increasing my assets. How many times had I had that opportunity, but had always preferred to spend the money on my daughter and granddaughter's whims? Is there anything else I should know? I asked. We have many clients in similar situations to yours, added the advisor with an understanding smile. Older people who came to Florida looking for a new beginning after complicated family relationships. You're not alone in this experience. That information comforted me deeply. I wasn't the only mother who had been manipulated and discarded by ungrateful children. There was an entire community of people who had chosen their own happiness instead of the toxic demands of their families. On Friday, I joined a walking group for retirees. There were 15 people, all between 65 and 85 years old, all seeking adventure and new experiences. During a walk along the beach, I started a conversation with a woman named Gloria, a 79-year-old who had moved to Florida from Chicago 5 years earlier. What brought you here? She asked as we admired the panoramic view of the Gulf. A granddaughter who told me her best birthday gift would be for me to die, I replied without filters. I no longer had the energy to soften reality. Gloria looked at me with wide eyes. Are you serious? Completely. After financing my daughter's house, practically raising my granddaughter, and sacrificing my retirement for their needs, I was told my presence in their lives was an unbearable burden. My God, murmured Gloria. And what did you do? What do you think? I disappeared from their lives, and here I am. Gloria smiled with admiration. You're very brave. It took me 12 years to make the decision to distance myself from my toxic family. My son and daughter-in-law treated me like a walking ATM. During the rest of the walk, Gloria and I shared our stories. She had come to Florida after realizing that her adult children only contacted her when they needed money for their whims. When she decided to set boundaries, they accused her of being a selfish mother and threatened not to let her see her grandchildren. The first few months were difficult, Gloria confessed as we walked along the shore. Guilt consumed me. I thought maybe I really was selfish. That a good mother always has to sacrifice for her children. And what changed your perspective? I realized that my children never asked if I was happy, if I had enough money for my own needs, or if my constant sacrifices were hurting me. All they cared about was what I could give them. That's not love, Margaret. It's exploitation. Gloria's words resonated deeply in my heart. For decades I had confused emotional manipulation with filial love, constant demands with genuine need. At the end of the walk, Gloria invited me to a support group that met bi-weekly. Older women who had made the difficult decision to prioritize their well-being above toxic family expectations. I accepted immediately. That night, I turned on my phone for the first time in 3 days. I had 45 missed calls and 31 text messages. Most were from Susan and Robert, but there were also some from unknown numbers, probably friends they had recruited to try to locate me. I read the messages chronologically, observing the evolution of my daughter's panic. The first ones were still emotional. Please, Mom, come back. We need you. Emily is crying for you." But gradually they became more desperate and focused on financial issues. "The bank called us for a meeting. They say you've canceled your guarantee for the mortgage. They can't take away our house over a misunderstanding." By the fourth day, the messages had become aggressive. "This is ridiculous, Mom. You're ruining our lives over a tantrum. Act like an adult and come back." And finally, desperate, "I've called all the hospitals, the police, your friends. No one knows where you are. If something happens to you, it will be my fault. Please, just tell me you're okay." It was fascinating to observe how at no point did Susan genuinely apologize for allowing Emily to treat me that way. At no point did she acknowledge the cruelty of my granddaughter's words or express real remorse. Everything revolved around the negative consequences my absence had for her. I decided to respond to one last message. "I am perfectly fine and happier than I've been in years. What you're experiencing now are the natural consequences of your actions. I hope this experience helps you understand the value of the people you love before it's too late." The response came immediately. "Please, Mom, we can fix this. I promise I'll never let anyone disrespect you again. Just come back." I wrote my final response. "Empty promises don't mend broken hearts, Susan. Emily's words revealed what you really think of me. You can't undo that truth with desperate promises." After sending that message, I blocked her number and all numbers associated with Robert. I also blocked the unknown numbers that had called me. It was time to close this chapter once and for all. In the following weeks, I met again with Mr. Reynolds to sign the papers that would allow me to reside permanently in Florida. I also made arrangements to definitively transfer my pension and begin the process of buying a small condo in St. Petersburg, using the money from the sale of my condo in Boston. "Are you sure you want to make it permanent?" asked Mr. Reynolds. "It's a very significant decision." "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I replied, signing each document with a firm hand. "For the first time in decades, I'm making decisions based on my own happiness, not on the demands of others." That afternoon, I received a call from Eleanor, my dear neighbor and accomplice in Boston. Her voice sounded animated. "Margaret, you won't believe it. Susan came to my apartment yesterday crying hysterically. She begged me to tell you to come back, that it had been a terrible misunderstanding." "And what did you tell her?" "I told her the truth, that what Emily had said to you was unforgivable, and that if I were you, I would have disappeared forever too. You should have seen her face when she realized that even the neighbors knew how cruel they had been to you." "Did she mention anything about her financial problems?" "Oh yes," she said, "that without your help, they can't pay the mortgage, that the bank is pressuring them, that Robert can't resolve the situation, and that Emily needs things for school that they can't afford. Basically, she realized everything you did for them when they lost it. It was exactly what I expected. She didn't miss me as a person. She missed my role as a financial provider and problem solver." "Eleanor," I asked her, "when someone asks about me, especially Susan, I want you to say that I'm dead to them. Because in a way, it's true. The Margaret who constantly sacrificed herself for an ungrateful daughter really did die on that birthday." "I understand perfectly," Eleanor responded. "And you know what? I think it's the best death you could have chosen." 3 weeks after my arrival in Florida, my new life had taken shape in ways I never imagined. I enrolled in watercolor classes 3 times a week. I began a book club on Tuesdays and Thursdays, discovering a love for literature that I hadn't known I possessed. I joined a reading group for expatriates that met on Sundays in a charming bookstore in downtown St. Petersburg. For the first time in decades, my calendar was full of activities I had chosen, activities that gave me pleasure and personal growth, not obligations imposed by the needs of others. But the most surprising transformation was financial. Without the constant demands of Susan and her family, my savings were not only stable, they were growing. The investments I had made with Mr. Reynolds were already showing positive returns, and for the first time, could plan my financial future based solely on my own needs. One Wednesday in May, as I was having my morning coffee on the sunny balcony of my condo, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated to answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Mrs. Margaret Wilson?" asked a female voice, with a professional tone. "Yes, this is she. Who's calling?" "My name is Deborah Simmons. I'm a social worker from the Department of Family Services in Massachusetts. I'm calling because we've received a complaint about your welfare." My blood froze. "A complaint? What kind?" "Your daughter Susan Wilson has filed a complaint, alleging that you may be suffering from dementia or cognitive deterioration, and that you've made financial and life decisions that put you at risk. According to her, you disappeared suddenly and are living in precarious conditions in another state, possibly under the influence of third parties." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Susan had gone to the extreme of involving social services, inventing a mental illness to invalidate my decisions and force my return. "Miss Simmons," I responded with a firm voice, "I do not suffer from dementia or cognitive deterioration. I am living in Florida by my own choice in a comfortable apartment, with excellent medical care, and in perfect mental health. My daughter's allegations are completely false." "I understand your position, Mrs. Wilson, but we need to verify your well-being. Would it be possible to coordinate a medical and psychological evaluation?" "Of course," I responded without hesitation. "I'm willing to undergo any evaluation that demonstrates I am in perfect mental health and that my decisions were made with complete lucidity." After coordinating the details for the evaluation, I hung up the phone feeling a mixture of rage and disbelief. Susan had crossed a line of no return. Not only had she allowed her daughter to wish for my death, but now she was trying to destroy my mental credibility to regain control over my money and my life. I immediately called my lawyer in Boston, Mr. Davis, who had helped me with all the legal procedures before my departure. "Margaret," he greeted me with concern, "I'm glad to hear your voice. I've had a very interesting week with your daughter." "I can imagine. I just spoke with social services. Susan is accusing me of having dementia." "That's not all," sighed Mr. Davis. "She has also hired another lawyer to try to challenge all the legal changes you made before leaving. She's claiming you weren't in your right mind when you signed them." "Can she do that?" "She can try, but she doesn't have a solid legal basis. I have recordings of all our conversations where you clearly demonstrate complete lucidity. Besides, the fact that you meticulously planned your departure and are living independently in Florida contradicts any allegation of cognitive deterioration." "What else is she doing?" "She tried to gain access to your bank accounts, claiming concern for your well-being. She also wanted to interrupt the sale process of your condo, but as everything is legally backed, she has no valid arguments." It was incredible how far Susan was willing to go to recover the financial benefits she had lost. "Mr. Davis, I want you to prepare a defamation lawsuit against my daughter. Her false allegations about my mental state can affect my reputation and my legal rights." "It will be my pleasure," he replied with satisfaction. "After seeing how she has treated you, I think it's time she faces the legal consequences of her actions." 2 days later, I appeared at a local doctor's office in St. Petersburg for the medical and psychological evaluations. The designated doctor, Dr. Williams, was an experienced woman who immediately understood the situation. "Mrs. Wilson," she told me, after a thorough 3-hour evaluation, "not only are you in perfect mental health, but the decisions you've made demonstrate admirable lucidity and courage. Your daughter is clearly trying to manipulate the legal system to recover financial benefits. Will that be officially documented?" "Absolutely. I'll send a detailed report to social services explaining that the allegations are unfounded and that you're living an independent and healthy life in Florida." That same afternoon, I received a call from the social worker. "Mrs. Wilson, we've received the medical report. It's evident that your daughter's allegations have no foundation. We're going to close the case and notify Susan that her complaint has been considered unfounded." "Thank you," I replied. "Will this be recorded in some way?" "Yes. It will be documented that she made a false complaint about the welfare of a family member, which can have legal implications if repeated." "Perfect. Susan had not only failed in her attempt to invalidate my decisions, but now she had an official record of having made false allegations. That night, I decided to do something I had postponed: write a detailed account of my experience, not for Susan, but for other women who might be living similar situations of manipulation and emotional abuse by adult children. I wrote for 4 hours, documenting every sacrifice I had made, every manipulation I had suffered, and every step I had taken to reclaim my dignity and my life. I titled the text, "When Maternal Love Becomes Self-Destruction: My Liberation at 7." I sent the text to a blog I had discovered, specializing in stories of older women who had found the courage to radically change their lives. A week later, I received an enthusiastic response from the editor. "Margaret," she wrote, "your story is powerful and inspiring. We've received hundreds of comments from women who completely identify with your experience. Would you be willing to participate in a video interview for our YouTube channel?" I accepted immediately. It was time to use my experience to help other women trapped in toxic family dynamics. The interview was published 2 weeks later and quickly went viral. Thousands of women shared similar stories of adult children who emotionally manipulated and financially exploited them. The comments were a catalog of pain and recognition. "My 45-year-old son lives in my house, doesn't pay rent, and insults me when I ask him to look for a job," wrote one woman. "My daughter only calls me when she needs money for vacations, but never has time to visit me when I'm sick," shared another. "I thought I was the only mother who felt used by her own children," confessed a third. But the most shocking thing came a week after the interview was published. I received an email from an address I immediately recognized. It was from Robert, my son-in-law. "Margaret," he wrote, "I saw your interview on YouTube. I need you to know that I completely agree with you. What Emily said was unforgivable, and the way Susan has treated you for years is unacceptable. I witnessed how they manipulate and use you, but I never had the courage to confront them because we were so dependent on your financial help." He continued, "I want you to know that Emily really misses you. She doesn't understand why you don't come to see her anymore. Susan told her you're sick and can't visit, but I think she deserves to know the truth when she's older." The email ended, "I know it's probably too late for apologies, but I wanted you to know that at least one person in this family recognizes how much you sacrificed for us. I hope you're happy in your new life." I read the email 3 times before deciding how to respond. Finally, I wrote, "Robert, I appreciate your honesty, but late apologies don't change the damage done. I hope this experience helps you be a better father, and that you teach Emily to value the people who love her before it's too late." It was the first time someone in my family publicly acknowledged the abuse I had suffered. That didn't change my decision to maintain distance, but it gave me a sense of validation that I had needed for years. My new life in Florida was flourishing in unimaginable ways. I had genuine friends who valued me for who I was, not for what I could give. I rediscovered hobbies and passions. I had peace of mind and financial stability. And most importantly, I had dignity. 6 months after my arrival in Florida, I received a call that would change everything once more. It was Eleanor, my dear friend in Boston. "Margaret," she said with an animated voice, "you have to hear this. Susan and Robert have lost the house." My heart stopped for a second. Despite everything, a part of me still worried about Emily's well-being. "What exactly happened?" I asked. "The bank foreclosed on the mortgage last week. Robert couldn't recover the money he lost. They fell behind on 3 more payments, and since you were the guarantor and withdrew your financial support, the bank proceeded with the foreclosure. Susan came to me yesterday crying desperately. And Emily, is she okay?" "They've moved to a small apartment on the other side of the city. Robert finally got a stable job at a travel agency, earning much less than before, but at least it's something secure. Susan has also gone back to work as a teacher, something she hadn't done since she got married." It was strange, the mixture of feelings I experienced. I felt no joy in their suffering, but a deep satisfaction of justice. For the first time in their lives, Susan, Robert, and Emily were living with the real consequences of their decisions, without having someone to rescue them. "Is there anything else?" continued Eleanor. "Susan asked me if I knew how to contact you. She said she wants to apologize genuinely, that she finally understands everything she lost when she lost you." "And what did you tell her?" "I told her that some wounds are too deep to heal, and that some words can never be unsaid. I also told her that you're flourishing in your new life, and that it's probably better for both of you that she not try to contact you." Eleanor was right. Throughout these 6 months, I had built an inner peace that I didn't want to risk for empty promises from a daughter who repeatedly demonstrated that she only valued me when she needed me. That afternoon, I received an unexpected call from Mr. Davis. "Margaret, I have interesting news," he said. "Susan and Robert's house has been sold by the bank, and as you were the guarantor, you're entitled to recover your initial investment of $250,000 plus accumulated interest." "How much is that in total?" "$205,000. The bank has already approved the transfer. The money will be in your account next week." It was incredible. Not only had I recovered my original investment, but I had gained an additional $35,000, money that would have been lost forever if I had continued being the eternally sacrificing mother. "There's also something else," continued Mr. Davis. "Your condo in Boston has finally been sold. After commissions and expenses, the net value is I was receiving more than $500,000 in assets that I had given up for lost. With my existing savings and the investments I had made in Florida, my net worth now exceeded $750,000. At 76, I was wealthier than I had ever been in my entire life. That night, I celebrated at my favorite restaurant overlooking the bay. I ordered the best champagne and toasted to the brave woman who had the courage to start over when everything seemed lost. As I dined, I reflected on the entire journey. I had begun this path as a broken and humiliated mother, devastated by the cruel words of an ungrateful granddaughter. But now I was an independent woman, financially stable, surrounded by genuine friends, and living the life I had always dreamed of. The next day, I decided to do something I had been considering for weeks. Write a complete book about my experience, not just my story, but a practical guide for older women trapped in toxic family relationships. I contacted a Florida publisher that specialized in self-help and personal growth books. The editor, a woman named Patricia, was immediately interested. "Margaret," she told me during our meeting, "your story touches on a topic that affects millions of women, but is rarely discussed openly. Emotional abuse by adult children is an epidemic problem that needs to be exposed." I spent the next 3 months writing When Love Hurts: Freeing Yourself from Family Emotional Abuse After 7. The book documented not only my personal experience, but also practical strategies for recognizing manipulation, establishing healthy boundaries, and finding the courage to prioritize one's own well-being. The book was published 8 months later and became a bestseller in several states. The letters I received from readers were extraordinary. Women from all over the country wrote to me telling how my story had given them the courage to make radical changes in their own lives. "I read your book and finally understood that I'm not a bad mother for refusing to continue financing my 47-year-old son's irresponsibility," wrote Martha from Oregon. "Your story helped me understand that true love doesn't demand self-destruction," shared Teresa from Michigan. "After reading your book, I sold my big house and moved into a small apartment that I can afford without depending on my children's help. For the first time in years, I sleep in peace," related Sophie from California. But the letter that touched me the most came a year after the book was published. It was from a young mother named Pamela. "Mrs. Wilson," she wrote, "I am 36 years old and have a mother who is 70, who has sacrificed her entire life for me and my brothers. After reading your book, I realized that we're treating her exactly as Susan treated you. Your story opened my eyes and made me understand that I was repeating a toxic pattern that could destroy my relationship with my mother forever. Yesterday, I called my mother and apologized for all the years of taking her for granted. I also told her I want to help her fulfill her own dreams instead of expecting her to always be available for mine. Thank you for helping me understand this before it was too late. That letter made me cry with joy. My pain had served to prevent other families from going through the same destruction mine had experienced. 2 years after my arrival in Florida, I received a letter in my mailbox. The handwriting was youthful and uncertain. When I opened it, my heart raced. It was from Emily, my granddaughter, now 20 years old. "Dear Grandma Margaret," she wrote, "Dad finally told me the truth about why you left. He told me I said horrible things to you on my birthday, and that's why you decided to start a new life away from us. I want you to know that I am deeply ashamed of my behavior. I was a spoiled and selfish teenager who didn't value what was most important, the unconditional love of her grandmother. These 2 years have been very difficult for our family. We lost the house, the car, and all the comforts we were used to. Mom and Dad had to start working in normal jobs, and I also had to find a part-time job to help pay for my studies. But I believe it's been the best thing that could have happened to us. For the first time, I understand the value of money, hard work, and above all, the people who really love us. I've read your book. I found it in the university bookstore and recognized your name on the cover. I've never cried so much in my life. Seeing our story from your perspective was devastating, but necessary. I finally understand everything you did for us, and how poorly we repaid you. I'm not asking you to forgive me or to come back into our lives. I just wanted you to know that you've changed this ungrateful granddaughter forever. I'm now studying to be a teacher, like you were. I want to help others and teach children values that I clearly didn't learn at home. With love and remorse, Emily." The letter included a recent photograph of her. She was no longer the spoiled teenager I had known, but a more mature young woman, with a more serious expression in her eyes. I cried for an hour after reading that letter, not from sadness, but from the understanding that my decision to preserve my dignity had been the right one, even if it meant distancing myself from the people I loved. And perhaps, in the long run, that had been the best lesson I could give Emily. I decided to respond. "My dear Emily, your words mean a lot to me. The pain I felt that day was deep. But now I understand that sometimes the most painful losses lead to the most important discoveries. I found my value in my strength. It seems you have found empathy and responsibility. I am proud of the young woman you are becoming. Life gives us all difficult lessons, and what's important is not never falling, but learning to get back up. Perhaps someday, when we have both completely healed, our paths might cross again. Until then, I wish you to find your own path with the same freedom that I finally found mine. With love, your grandmother, Margaret." Today, 3 years after that fateful birthday that forever changed my life, I sit on the terrace of my new condo in St. Petersburg, which I bought with my own money, watching life go by in the plaza while I write the final lines of my story. I am 79 years old, with considerable assets, a book translated into 3 languages, dear friends from all over the world, and an inner peace I never thought I would experience again. Emily asked me as a birthday gift to disappear from her life, preferably by dying. I granted her wish in the most extraordinary way possible. What she never calculated was that by losing me, she not only lost a grandmother who loved her unconditionally, but also the person who kept her financial world stable. Last week I received an email from Susan, the first direct contact after 3 years. "Mom," she wrote, "I've read your book. I never imagined how much we hurt you, how much you sacrificed for us, how much we took you for granted throughout your life. I'm not asking you to come back or forgive me. I just want you to know that I finally understood what you tried to teach us, albeit in the hardest way. I hope you're happy in your new life, because you deserve all the happiness in the world." I didn't respond to the email. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. But I kept her words in my heart, not as a victory, but as confirmation that all pain can eventually transform into wisdom. My awakening was my gift to them. My new life was my gift to me, and it was worth every tear, every sacrifice, every moment of pain that brought me here. Because sometimes the only way to save yourself is to have the courage to completely lose yourself in order to be reborn as the person you were always meant to be. Every story carries within it an echo of our shared humanity. If this story has touched your heart, share it with someone special. Leave us a comment about what you felt, and subscribe to join us for more soul-reaching stories. Because every life tells a story that deserves to be heard. See you next time.